Welcome to the Worst of the Riot Extra. Earlier this week on the Worst of the Riot podcast, if you missed this episode, we talked about whether it was possible to date somebody who has opposite political beliefs that you do. And shockingly, I think after we talked about that for a bit, we discovered that while that may be difficult, it actually may be beneficial if you can make it work. And so the idea for today is to start talking through some other ideas, especially too with Valentine's Day coming up. Some people, their normal standards or their normal things they look for in a partner, you might let some of those go a little bit, be a little more lenient, a little more flexible, just because you want to have somebody for Valentine's Day. And so we're going to discuss and rate the difficulty of dating somebody that's opposite of you in a given topic. So let's start with politics. Isaiah, the difficulty of dating somebody who has different political beliefs than you.
I'm going to rate politics a 10.
Oh, I thought it was a scale of 1 to 5.
I'm doing one. I got 1 to 10 here.
Oh, you got 1 to 10. Well, then I'll just have to double off mine. Then I guess I give mine an 8.
An 8, okay.
Yeah, I think it can be done. It depends. For all of these things, it kind of depends on how strictly you adhere to different stuff. For politics, if you're just super into it, whatever your beliefs are, it is going to be difficult. But I think a lot of people that are super into politics also, like, it depends. There's some people that are really into politics, but also like just love the debate of it. And so that actually could be a thing where you could kind of thrive together if you two are just, you enjoy the debate, you enjoy the competition side of it.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into the whole politics thing. That's why I rated it a 10, just because the baseline of when you tell them whatever your political side is, things like that, depending on if they were expecting you to be Republican or Democrat and you're not, or you're different than they expected you to change the way they look at you, things like that. Mm-hmm. There's so much that goes into it nowadays that back when I've been on dates before where they've asked me on like a very early date.
Yeah.
It was really important for them to know like what my political views were. Mm-hmm. Whenever that happened, it never worked.
Do you think, what do you think is more difficult? Dating somebody with opposite political beliefs than you, or somebody that is very political dating somebody who doesn't really care?
It has to be opposite.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. But I also think there's plenty of trials and tribulations that come along with being a very politically engaged person. And then, because for you, like, that's actually, I guess, a thing where if that's you, it's so important to you. And it's not just like, it's not like sports where it's like, oh, I like to pay attention to it, it's entertaining. If for politics, for a lot of people, it's like, oh, this is important because it affects our community, our town, our country, or whatever. And so if the other person like, I don't really care, it makes it, you can look at them like, oh, they're not, they're not morally, they're not on my level, that kind of thing.
I can see that side of it, but I can also see the side that's like, if you're both into it mm-hmm. and you're on opposite sides of it, that's, I think, is worst case scenario.
Yeah. Something that should be pointed out before we go any further, and we did encounter this talking about dating somebody with opposite political beliefs as you on the show earlier this week, and that is that for each and every one of these, no matter what we rate the difficulty, the reason we're rating the difficulty is because there are, in all cases, going to be people that are like, oh, I've dated and had a happy relationship with whatever opposite. And so, yes, we understand. It can happen in just about any instance. But how difficult is it? How likely is it? Let's move on.
So if we rate yours really high and you say, oh, me and my husband are completely opposites on politics, and I rated a 10, don't be offended. You should be like, oh my gosh, look at us overcoming.
It's impressive.
It is. I'm impressed by you.
We were impressed by the people that did say that they did that.
I'm not saying that you can't do it. I'm just saying that would be hard, and it is impressive if you can.
Let's do this one. What is the difficulty of a country folk and a city folk getting together?
See, this one I think is a little bit underrated.
Really?
I think this is high. I'm rating this higher than a lot of people probably expect. Mm-hmm. I'm putting this in like the 7-8 neighborhood. This is one of my higher ones I've got.
Really?
Yeah, I think this is difficult.
Why do you say that? Because I converting my 5-point scale to a 10-point scale. I guess this one's a 4.
A 4.
Me.
So yeah, we're completely opposite here.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of difficulties that go into this, but the main difficulties are all based of like living location.
Mm-hmm.
So like where you're going to end up living, what your hobbies are. Like if you're city folk, you probably like to be out in the city, like to be doing stuff in the city, out and about, versus like country folk. That's like bonfire, baby. That's hanging out in the woods, hunting, doing whatever you do. It's completely different lifestyles. And that's why when those kind of people come together, someone is making big compromises based off of where they want to live. Country people obviously like to live in the country. They don't want to be in the hustle and bustle. City folk want to be close to everything. You want everything to be easy. You don't want to make a 20-minute drive to go to Kroger. And so there's just a lot of things that go into it versus where you're going to live and what your day-to-day activities and fun are, that someone's making really big compromises in that one. But you can do it.
Yeah, I think it can be done. I think that it does. The closer you get to moving in together and getting married and then deciding like where your future is, where you're going to buy a home, it gets more difficult at that point. But as far as dating and leading up to it goes, if you live close enough to each other, I mean, so many people, you just wind up watching TV anyways. You can do that in the city or the country. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it affects the relationship that much until you really decide, well, it's important to me that I live out in the middle of nowhere in the outdoors and whatever. And it's important to me that I live walking distance from a grocery store. Like, that's where it gets difficult. But all the way until then, I feel like it shouldn't be too big of a roadblock for you. So I give it a 4. Next up, a motivated person, a go-getter, and a lazy person. How difficult?
I put this down, another one of the ones I rated higher. I put this down as a 9.
Because my scale is a 5-point scale converted to a 10-point scale. Everything's just doubled. There's less nuance. So this was a 5. I'll give it a 10 then.
You're giving it a 10.
Yeah, we're on the same page on this one.
Tough.
I just imagine the go-getter, the motivated person, the type A personality is not going to have a lot of time for the lazy person's perspective, point of view. And I do think, and as we go through this, by and large, I think if you can make it work with two opposites in any of these instances, I think that's actually a good thing. I think this one is, though, one of the toughest because I think the lazy person is going to frustrate the motivated person so much. The motivated person always wanting to get, the hustle, the grind, always trying to get stuff done. And then there's the lazy person just sitting on the couch, content with that. I think it'd drive the motivated person crazy.
See, for me on this one, I also, and this is for many of these, one of the bigger issues as well is I think that when you're in a relationship where one person is one end of the spectrum and the other person is the other, no matter what the category is, it almost drives you further that way. And so the motivated person is obviously going to be trying to get the lazier of the two to be doing things, being organized, all these things that they think are really important to them every single day that are not important to the lazy person. It's going to drive the lazy person crazy as well. And so it's going to just make them want to do less, and the motivated person is going to end up wanting to do more. And so for me, this is a really hard one because for the person that likes to be a little bit lazier, not as motivated, it's going to almost drive them further into that to where they're like, they think they're so much better than me. That's going to be a constant argument. Why do you think you're so much better than me? Because you'll do this, this, and that. And then it's going to be the motivated person saying, it's not that I think I'm better than you. I just want you to do these things. It's a nonstop argument. It's really hard.
Well, you also run into like a motivated person then may feel like they have more pressure to carry the load, to be the breadwinner, to whatever. And then they feel like they're, getting all this stuff done and the other person isn't contributing their fair share. You also could have a thing where the motivated person working, doesn't have time to hang out with the lazy person, or is so tired from all the work they're getting done, all the stuff they're doing, all the moves they're making, that when the lazy person's like, come on, let's go have some fun. And the motivated person's like, no, I've had such a long week. I just want to chill. Like there's a lot of, and again, it's a dynamic. If you can figure it out, that's great. I feel like it could be a positive, but in the actually making that work does feel like it's got a lot of foibles in the way.
Yeah, it's a mix too because it's like the person who's a little more relaxed. I mean, obviously it's the constant battle of all work, no play for the motivated person. So for them even, I mean, yet again, it makes it sound like they're the one who's in the right because they're doing more, whatever, being motivated. Whereas sometimes the person who's being motivated needs to cool it.
Yeah.
Have some fun. Learn to have some fun. Not everything's so serious all the time. And so there's notes that can be taken on both sides of it. But either way, it is not going to be very much fun dealing with that. And if you want to get really crazy, if you get friends involved, this is one of the most toxic ones. If you get friends involved because the motivated person's friends are going to be like, why are you hanging out with him or her?
Yeah.
They're such a lazy bum. And this is one of the worst ones if you want to get friends involved. Oh boy.
That's true. Talking of getting friends involved, this one I feel like really does. The friends' opinions is gonna come into play on this one. Conventional attractiveness. You got one person conventionally attractive, the other conventionally unattractive. Difficulty rating.
I had this one down as a 4.
Okay, we're similar. I'm going to veer from my doubling of things and give this a 3. Because I had it as a 1.
A 1?
Yeah, I had it as a 1 on a scale of 1 to 5, my 5-point rating scale. But since I've converted my rating scale to a 10, I'll give it a 3. I think it's really your comfortability. You know what I mean? There's no reason except for everybody else's opinion that a attractive person could not be happy with an unattractive person. It's their choice. It's what they, it's maybe the attractiveness is not what they look for in a partner or whatever. It's not as important to them. So there's no reason why, like, as you guys are going through your relationship, it would really have a big burden. It would be the judgment of others. And also, if the unattractive person may be a little insecure about the whole situation, they're probably going to be more paranoid about the partner being faithful. But that's I feel like those are rarer. However, I guess there's a reason that most people in their relationships seem to be similar attractive levels. So maybe I'm wrong on this one. I don't know.
See, I think that the only issues, you're running into are obviously like jealousy over the one who thinks that they're maybe less conventionally attractive, especially if they're aware that they're swinging it out of their league. That can be a tough situation too, because then it's like, especially in the beginning. The beginning, I think, is the hardest part where you're like, why are you choosing me?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on type of deal. And then for the person that is maybe the more conventionally attractive of the two, there's like 2 different ways you can go. Either the person that they're with, they know that maybe they're less conventionally attractive is one way, or it's they think that they are really attractive.
Yeah.
And so for them, when people are saying like, why are you with him or her? They don't understand because they're like, I do find them very attractive.
Yeah.
Because everybody has different tastes and that's how it goes. Or it's the other way of like, I love their personality so much. They might not be the hottest him or her in whatever place you're at, but they're who I want to be with. And so that's kind of like the harder one for the person that maybe is more conventionally attractive when friends get involved and family members, whoever, are saying like, why are you with them? They're not very cute.
Yeah.
But that's just you staying strong with that. The longer you're in the relationship for, the easier that gets to where I can see in the beginning, hard. As you go along, not difficult whatsoever.
Yeah, that's definitely the right way to look at it. The first few dates, the introduction to everybody is when that'd be difficult for the more attractive person. But, once you're talking about you guys have been together for a while, it shouldn't be a big deal. What about this one? What about sports teams? Something that's close to our hearts.
Little rivalry action.
Yeah.
I marked sports teams down. I think if we're going like rivalries, I marked this one down as a 2.
2 out of 10.
2 out of 10. I put this one as one of my lowest ones.
I initially had this a 2 out of 5, so that'd make it a 4. But I'm gonna drop it down to a 3. I think
this scale of 5 is really throwing you.
Yeah, it is. I think for sports teams, there can be some difficulty, but that's like, what is that? It comes up a couple times a year if you guys play each other. But otherwise, if you're passionate enough about your sports teams to actually care about this, then that means that you guys in a relationship, that's something that you guys are going to share. And yes, if Ohio State plays Michigan or Alabama plays Auburn or the Yankees play the Red Sox, it's going to be contentious. But even for the most invested sports fans, like the trash talk is the fun of it. It's not even like politics where it can feel like life and death. It's all fun. And so even though it might, you guys might get a little heated, it will burn a little more when one of you loses, but I think you can work through that.
And
I
also,
think it makes it more fun.
For me, this one hits close to home because my younger brother, obviously we're big Ohio State fans in my house. My younger brother, big Ohio State fan, and his girlfriend, huge Michigan fan. Like family's a Michigan fan. And so for them, this is a constant debacle that I see them going through. And it is frustrating for my younger brother, especially as of late with all the losses we've taken at the hands of Michigan. But I mean, for them, it's no issue, but it is a tough one.
Yeah, it adds a little spice. But I can think of my wife was a big Tom Brady fan, and I'm a big Aaron Rodgers fan. So
is that a rivalry between those two?
Well, it was when they played each other in the conference championship game the year the Buccaneers won the Super Bowl, and that she was definitely not helping the emotions I was feeling that day. But by and large, like it just means that we're both really into football, and so that's something we can share. And even though, am I really gonna not be able to get over that because she's over there cheering for Tom Brady? No, you can move on. It just makes the rest of the time something you guys have that you can enjoy together.
Yeah, the only other one for me on that as well, because I have been around my brother's girlfriend, the only thing that's tough is like if there's a family event, like we used to watch the Ohio State Michigan game at my grandparents' house every year. And so obviously, if she's around the fam, my whole fam's Ohio State.
That's tough. Yeah, I'd have to hold
so
your
if
tongue
she's cheering, everybody's like, you know what, that's not my girlfriend.
Everybody's mean mugging her. Yeah,
I don't want to have to rip you, but I will rip you. I'm not getting hugs from you. Like,
yeah.
I didn't choose you to be here, but for the actual couple, not a big deal.
What about something that's very closely related to sports teams? Religion.
That seems completely opposite.
Some people,
they do intertwine.
The sports and the religion neck and neck. What's your rating on religion? And I think there's two different aspects of this. There's one ultra religious person, like, practicing religion, you're a Christian, you go to church all the time, that kind of thing, versus non-religious at all, pretty much. And then there's also, you guys are both religious, but different religions. Although I feel like the rating for me is very similar.
See, for me, this is a hard one because it sways so much depending on how much it means to you. Like sports teams, no matter how much it means to you, it doesn't mean that much to you to where you would end a relationship over this.
Yeah.
Where your religion could.
Yeah.
So I'm putting this one as like a 7.
7.
I have it like in the 7 to 8 range, where I think this could be volatile.
Yeah. I know that yet again, but I feel like this one is important to point out that there are people in relationships where you don't share the same religion. I feel like that's kind of rare though. It doesn't feel like that actually feels like one of the biggest deciding factors of what gets two people, what will make them work or not work, which is why I put this high. I put this like 9 or 10.
You got a 9 or 10?
Yeah. This is on the 5-point rating scale, doubling it. It's a 10. And that is because, I guess, let me put it this way. I feel like if you're a non-religious person, you might be like, what's the big deal? I could date somebody. Yep. I don't know. I feel like that's how I think of it. But I think because if you're very religious, in most religions, that's life and death kind of thing. Yep. And so it's very important to you. And so what I feel like happens a lot of times is people will start off relationships this way, and then one or the other person pulls each other the other way. I think some good advice would be, if you are a religious person, don't try to start dating somebody who's not religious and try to convert them. Like that is don't try to evangelize a person. Yeah, you got to do it in the opposite order. It's probably not going to work out the way you expect. But I think it's difficult. And then, I mean, I don't even know the idea of two different religions getting together. It just sounds tough because while some religions have similar beliefs, still at the end of the day, there's a reason that you are whatever religion you are, and then the other person's the religion they are. There's a reason for it. So I tend to think this is one of the harder ones.
See, I think that the reason I don't give it the 10 that I give like the politics one is because I think with compromises that you could maybe make this work depending on how much you're into religion versus how much your partner isn't into religion. Like if you're all in, this is going to be similar to like politics. If you're all in, this is going to be extremely difficult.
Definitely.
But if maybe one person in the relationship is pretty into it and the other person isn't as much into it, but they're not against it. That's the part where I feel like it gets kind of crazy is if they're against it, like especially when kids come into the frame.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Once kids get in the frame, it gets crazy.
Yeah.
That makes it so much tougher because if you're like not willing to let them be a part of it, if one partner isn't willing to let the kids be a part of it, that's when it gets really, really wild. So in that way it is, I feel like one of the toughest ones, but it all comes with compromise. And this one, there is a compromise where I think that with some of the other ones, there's like with politics, I feel like there's almost no compromise.
Yeah, they are similar, for better or worse, politics and religion, where if you adhere to one or the other or both, it informs everything you do. And that's why if the other person in the relationship, it doesn't inform everything they do, it doesn't affect their entire worldview, then that's going to probably frustrate you and it's going to make things difficult. So
yeah, and that's the only thing that I think is the difference between them is sometimes with politics, it can be if the other person is on the other side of it, which is like Republican, Democrat, whatever it is, that can be assigned for you that like they're this or they're a bad person. They believe these things. Whereas usually with religion, if you're someone who's really into it and someone who's not, that doesn't mean that you're a bad person or that like your beliefs, if you don't believe anything, that doesn't mean that you're automatically a bad person, or that doesn't mean that you're automatically this, where sometimes in politics, if you're a Republican or if you're a Democrat, that means that you believe this, which makes you a bad person.
Yeah.
Which that can obviously change the way that you look at your partner, if you are on the other side of that. Whereas religion, if they don't believe, or maybe if they don't believe that much, that usually doesn't make you go straight to, they're a horrible person and I'm completely against them immediately. And so that's why the swing there is a little bit, there's more compromise ability there than there is if you immediately think your partner is the exact opposite of you.
Yeah, no, actually, you're right. Opposite in regards to politics, at least American politics, means something very different than opposite or different. Like in religion, opposite isn't exactly is the same thing. Like opposite in politics means you're the opposite party. You're going against me and my beliefs. Religion, it's more if you like for us. Being Christian, that's something that affects everything you do, but it's just different people have different levels of what that actually means to them. Whereas politics, if you believe you're if you feel Republican, then you're probably going to feel that Democrats are the opposite of you and just have totally opposite beliefs, whether many of them do or don't. Everybody thinks a little different. Let's move on. What about introvert versus extrovert?
This one I had down as like a 3. I don't know. This is probably like a 3. I have it above sports teams because I could see issues with this that come into the relationship, but I also feel as if this is one of the most common differences in relationships.
Yeah. And this one feels like it can be difficult, but it also feels like one of the top iron sharpens iron type things where two extroverts getting together. I mean, it can work, but it can also like maybe you guys eventually just wind up exhausting each other because you're always, you know what I mean? Like you're just always going. An introvert and extrovert, you cancel each other out of it. I can see how an extrovert is going to pull introverted people into doing stuff they might not normally do, and that's going to help them get some new experiences that they might have missed out on otherwise, and that's for the better. And then vice versa, the introvert might help make sure the extrovert doesn't get too burned out or whatever. So I don't know. I just feel like this is one of the more common ones that you see in relationships. And so clearly it can work. I'll give it a 2 or 3.
Yeah, this one's an easy one. Like, this is how me and my girlfriend are 100% like this. I'm an extrovert. She's an introvert. And the only frustrations usually come in like introvert-extrovert relationships is the extrovert or the introvert not understanding the other one's point of view. Like, if I'm an extrovert, so for me, like, I can't imagine a world where you can't just go up and talk to people or just like face-to-face confrontation. Whereas my girlfriend's horrible about like explaining her feelings and things like that. And so that's when we will get into it. Cause I'm like, just tell me.
Yeah.
Just confront me face to face. If you have an issue, just tell me about it. If I have an issue, obviously I'll just tell you about it because yet again, I'm an extrovert. That's where those issues can lie. And then sometimes for the introverted person, the other thing too, and my girlfriend talks about this all the time, she needs time to be by herself because I'm a lot to handle.
Yeah.
So she needs a good she needs like reset time, like recharge time.
Yeah.
And so you have to work that out. And you have to understand that sometimes you can be, if you're an extroverted person, you can be too much. You got to give them some time to sit by themselves in a dark room.
This one definitely feels like it can pretty easily be solved and pretty easily be made to work with understanding and patience of the other person, where some of the other ones are just, it's much more difficult. And then let's do income. 2 people on different sides of the spectrum when it comes to how much money they're making.
I had this one down as a 4.
We're very similar.
I didn't think that it was a huge deal.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's nothing.
Yeah. I similarly, doubling the 2 I gave it in my 5-point rating scale. I've landed at a 4 on this one. I think it's another one that's pretty simple with understanding. Like, as long as the person with the bigger income is just comfortable with, I'm going to be the breadwinner. This other person, maybe they just have something that doesn't make as much money, but they're passionate about it or whatever. It can be a contentious subject, but at the same, it's just as easy if you 2 guys love each other for everything else, then it's probably not going to be a massive roadblock for you, as long as you're just kind of open about it up front.
I've seen, I don't know where I saw this recently, but I heard people talking about how this can be a bigger issue, and it usually occurs when the woman is the larger breadwinner versus the man, because sometimes if you look at traditional gender roles, the man is supposed to be the breadwinner. And so for certain guys, that can be a little bit of like an insecurity, or like in their mind, they grew up thinking like, I'm going to provide for my family and I'm going to do this. And so if your wife is making more than you, you're a lucky guy. But if your wife is making more than you, sometimes for certain men, that can be like, that's their purpose. And so for them, that could be a hard thing to get used to. The power dynamic in the relationship can feel off for them. And so that's the only time where I can see this being an issue, is if you do have that sense of, I want to be the man. I want to be the one bringing home the money. And you're not. Yeah.
You should just feel
lucky guy.
Yeah, right. Feel grateful for that. I didn't have this specifically down, but what about this one though? Spending habits. That's
tough.
That's high. That's up there with like religion. It's probably
that
pretty
goes
close.
hand in hand with this too.
Yeah, because I can see if your incomes are very disparate, and then you feel like if you're the high income earner and the lower income earner is spending way more than their fair share. Obviously, it's not, if you guys have different incomes, it's not going to be 50-50 of the spending, so expenditure. But if they feel like they're sucking up all the money and you feel like you're more frugal with it, that is actually very difficult to navigate. It can be very similar to the introvert extrovert, where it can actually, if you can learn to live with it, the more free spender is going to help the frugal person have more fun than they would have otherwise. And the frugal person hopefully will help the big spender stay out of debt and learn to save a little bit. But it's hard to strike that balance if you are on two different ends of the spectrum there.
Yeah, that's one of the ones too. Yet again, it goes hand in hand with income. Obviously, a higher earner versus lower earner. Who feels like they should be spending the money? Is someone in the partnership spending too much money? Like that can be an issue.
Sounds like my wife.
All right.
Come on.
It'll never get old.
Yeah.
But yeah, in my mind too, I think when it comes to the income disparity, if the person who is making less money is the higher spender, yet again, that is going to be causing issues. It's going to be a little bit, especially if the person who's earning a lot is very frugal. That could be a frustration point in the relationship that I can imagine.
I think we've learned a lot. Hopefully, we've been helpful. And going forward, just try to be patient. I think for all of these, patience, understanding is key. If you happen to have somebody that you're in a relationship that is opposite of you, congratulations, I guess.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah.
You should, and if you find yourself in one of these areas that we said were difficult, you should text in at 8772 RadioU
Yes.
and tell us about your relationship and how you made it work. And don't come at us for saying that it's difficult. Because we said in the beginning
That's right.
that you could make any of these things work.
If you can make it work, we're proud of you.
That's very good for you. But if you can't make it work, you can text that in too and tell us the story of why it didn't work out.
It is the riot.